Good afternoon, and today we're going to be looking at building a T4 diff fresh out of the bag, and how we prepare the components to make sure that they're all nice and free in the diff and there's no binding in the differential. So first thing we'll do is go ahead and open the bag. Not too many tools needed for this, just a 1.5mm driver, some tweezers and some cutters as well, although I will explain more about what I'm going to use the cutters for in just a moment. Move those bits out of the way. So first things first is when we look at the parts trees on these spruces, we need to make sure that everything's taking off of here nice and neatly. Now the way I do this is you can use a hobby knife just to cut through there and get as close to the bevel as possible, or I've got a pair of cutters here. These are actually Citadel cutters which have got a flat back on them as well. Now the purpose of using the flat back is so that when we get in here nice and close, we can cut right up to the edge using the flat of it, so it will naturally find the flat point on the gear, and that should come out nice and free with limited edges on it. There will still be little burrs on there, and we do want to sand those off, so we just need a little piece of sandpaper for that. And then we're going to just go across these edges here and make sure that we sand them off, and we're going to need to do that for all the gears on there, but we will come back to that in a second once I've done that. So what we've now done is I've sanded off all the burrs around the edges, but then what I've also done is used a flat piece. You don't need a huge piece of sandpaper as well, the same one I did the edges with, and then you just turn the gears upside down on the flatboard and you give them a gentle rub like that, just to make sure they're nice and clean and free as well. And you'll notice that any high points that are on the back there will have these light marks where you've sanded those, and then you want to do the same for the satellite gears, because we want a nice flat back on those. They don't need a lot of work, just a little bit of work, but once you've done this stage you will need to just spray a little bit of cleaner or worth onto a bit of tissue like so, and then we'll start with a larger gear and just give it a clean off, and all the way around as well. We want to make sure there's no dust or any debris on any of the gears, and then once you've done this stage I would leave these aside to just let them evaporate, let the brake cleaner evaporate from them. Okay, so now we've finished preparing all the parts. They've all been nice and clean, so there shouldn't be any debris or any dust that's left over from those on any of those components. So now we're going to go ahead and start assembling our differential, and we'll start with the bottom case. First off I'm going to take my washer and place that down in the bottom of the diff. Just give it a little push, and we're going to take our larger diff ring and we're going to drop that down there, and that's going to sit nicely. It will just drop straight onto the bottom. Now this part here is we use a 3000 diff oil that's actually come in the kit. Take our out drive and just place a little bit, just a tiny amount of oil just around the outside there, and then just across the top on the edge. All we're doing is just taking off the sharpness there, so that when we hold our finger in here and push the diff through the O-ring there, it doesn't cause any damage to the O-ring, and that should just gently and neatly slide straight up into the recess. Now inside the differential we need to line up the channel. Now one channel is deeper than all the others, and that's where we put the pin in. So this should drop down into there. This is a little bit of a tricky manoeuvre, this. So just bear with me a second. So that should be roughly in line now. And then that should, is on the strongest of pliers. What I've tried to do is use something that's got a little bit more reach on it. And that should slide down across the top of the pin. And then we'll line that up in the middle there. Now once it's in there it does move around. It's got a little bit of tension against it, but not too much. So as you can see there, the pin is moving freely at the bottom of the differential. Now we take one of our larger satellite gears and just drop that on there. Just hold my finger on the top of it. I'm not forcing it down, I'm just turning the bottom until it seats and it drops down there. And give that a little turn, and that should be lovely and smooth. Shouldn't feel any notching or any resistance on that whatsoever. And then we're just going to repeat the same procedure for the top piece. So once again we'll put the O-ring on. It's easy to see on this one because it's not as deep. we take our ring, place that on there, take our next out drive and just lightly oil around the outside, not too much, again for the same reasons as before, just when we push through here through the O-ring it doesn't create any tension and it goes through very smoothly. And we're going to take our tweezers, where we need to buy, don't use cheap ones like these, use something that's a bit more robust so that when you squeeze it, it doesn't actually bend. And then just with the base of your hand like that, just hold it there, grab the pin and then just ease it into the hole. There we go, she's in place as well. Just going to move it over just a little bit more. Then take my main satellite gear, bevel, and again just give that a little feel around there. Again, there shouldn't be any notching at this point, you shouldn't be feeling any resistance at all. So that's the two parts of our outdrive, two parts of the diff casing completed. Then we move on to the main centerpiece. So this is pretty straightforward, all four gears on, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Then the washers around each side, 1, 2, 3, and finally number 4. As it clears the O-ring, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second. And we just take the whole assembly and that should drop neatly into the middle there. It will push down until it seats on the gears. Then we're just looking to give it a little turn there, and there's no resistance on that, so that feels lovely and free. Doesn't feel like there's any notching at all on it, because we're building this diff dry. So all I'm going to do now is to finish off and make sure this diff is running smoothly. Is just put the two halves of the diff case together, then we're going to screw it together. And just make sure there's no resistance. I mean, you can probably just get away with just holding the two sides together like that and then just turn the diff. And as long as you're not feeling any notching or anything in there, then you're good to go. So what we would normally want to do is here is you put the gasket in. You want to remove the insert holes there, place the gasket in there, fill the oil up according to the manual. The O-ring is optional. It's not always used. I always use it on anything from 3000 down, but you can get away without using the O-ring in there. And then once you've put your diff together as per the oil just above there, which is about 1.5 grams, what I would do is, it does say to weigh the diff like that. What I always do afterwards though is, once you've actually built your differential and finished putting it together like this, weigh the whole differential. And once you've weighed the whole thing, then you'll know if you've got any leakage or anything like that. It's easy to do it without disassembling to check the weight of the oil in it. Yeah, so just to clarify, I would make sure that once you've built the diff and you've got all the oil in it, then weigh it on the scales and note the weight of the whole differential with the oil in it as well. One final tip I would use is, if you've got more than one differentials, if you get yourself one of these fine Tipex pens, and then just write the weight number on the side of the differential, and then you can just quickly reference it and you should know what weight oil you've got on your differential. Hopefully that should give you a nice smooth action the differential with no notching. If you do find any notching, then just disassemble, remove the gears from there, and you can, if you need to, you can take two out at a time and leave two in the differential and then turn around and see which ones are notching and where they're causing it. And it's probably going to be one of the edge burrs that hasn't come off properly, so just give them a light sand again, give them a clean again, and then reassemble and try again, and then it should give you a lovely smooth action differential. Again, thank you for watching, thank you for taking the time to watch. Please do like and subscribe to the channel. Any feedback and comments, we would love to hear from you. Thanks again. So I thought about afterwards, but we'll see how this sounds. This is what the diff should sound like. Lovely and smooth all the way around. No notching at all.